Welcome to another episode of Biz Money Talks with Tracey Bissett.
Yeah.
I am very excited. We have a special guest today, Jason Charlebois, who is the SVP of Small Business at Scotiabank. Welcome, Jason.
Thanks very much for having me, Tracey, and welcome to all of those listening and watching from coast to coast.
Excellent. So I'm excited you're here today because you've recently at Scotiabank released a small business trend report entitled SMEs, the Shortage Economy. And so we're going to have a good chat about that today. It's so important for business owners to understand what are the issues that they're facing, what's coming at them, what's going on in the economy, so they can adequately plan to deal with those road bumps as they're coming, manage their cash flow, and really take charge and accountability for the direction their business is taking so they can hit their goals for the year. So really excited to have you here. Would love it if you can start by sharing a little bit about you and about the work that you do with business owners at Scotiabank.
Yeah, thanks, Tracey. And at Scotiabank, we're proud to serve businesses from coast to coast through our network of small business advisors that specialize in all different industries. So hopefully, some of what I'll talk about today will resonate with listeners across the country, and you'll be able to take Scotiabank up on some advice and solutions that can help you navigate these challenging and overused word, but unprecedented times that we live in. At Scotiabank, small business is a key business as part of our overall business bank, and I'm responsible for the operations of our small business banking here in Canada, which comprises a national network of small business advisors and specialists in different disciplines, whether that be in professionals, agriculture, healthcare, and other industries. And we have a team that builds a set of products and services and solutions, both digital through the voice in terms of video advisors and physical advisors in different parts of the country that serve the needs of small businesses. So I'm very proud to lead that organization and happy to be here with you today, Tracey.
Excellent. And listeners who tune in, they know that we're here to provide actionable insights, information that's going to help them run their business and that can feed into their strategy because it's all about doing. Business owners are so busy. They don't have time to be sitting down and planning for long periods of time. It's what can they action immediately and actually change the direction, the way things are going. So how does that tie into the financials? And certainly some of the things we're going to talk about today are going to have a financial impact on the business. So would love for you to start by sharing just a few details of this latest small business trend report, SMEs, the shortage economy.
Yeah, for sure. We do different pieces throughout the course of any given year where we test the sentiment of how business owners are feeling and look at macroeconomic and industry trends and compile a set of kind of findings and then a set of recommendations and advice for businesses. And the interesting thing about this most recent report, Tracey, is that this last fall we had done what we call a path to impact report, which was kind of assessing how businesses had fared through COVID. And obviously, the small business segment, many of us on this chat today have, obviously lived directly the impacts that the pandemic has had. And there was a good amount of optimism late last fall around prospects for the future as we started to hopefully believe and see that, the pandemic was starting to get behind us. This was before Omicron arrived, of course. But there was optimism and things like supply chain disruptions and other concerns that kind of might have been in the minds of some at the time weren't being seen as things that needed to be worried about in the longer term or the medium to longer term. And then fast forward, and here we are, the cusp of summer, and we're living with, unfortunately, some real impactful supply chain issues, input issues. Labor-related challenges. This report, identified that, we've got, for the first time ever, like a significant shortage of imbalance when it comes to labor, meaning there's more job vacancies than there are job workers willing to fill those vacancies versus, if you think back in our traditional economic world, there's more people looking for work than there is work to be had, and now all of a sudden the worker has been inverted in terms of in a position of choice, in a position of decision-making power in terms of what type of work they're going to do for what wage. And that obviously all has a big ripple effect down in small businesses when they're looking for workers, depending on what industry you're in, and especially seasonal industries that are looking for spikes of workers at certain times, maybe this time of the year. This is a really difficult challenge. That was one of the big things that we saw. And obviously the second big thing is the economy, as it relates to inflation and as it relates to cost of borrowing, right? So inflation has been at multi-decade highs persistently now for a number of months. It doesn't appear, when you look at our economic forecasts forward, that inflation is going to tame or lessen anytime soon. Hopefully some of the actions that our government officials through the Bank of Canada and other institutions are taking are going to help bring it down, but that comes at a cost, because that means borrowing costs are increasing. So just last week the Bank of Canada increased the base interest rate by another 50 basis points, which is another full 0.5%, and they're meeting again next month, where the anticipation is another 50 basis point increase, and then possibly another one again in this short summer. So we could have seen within a period of only 6 months, somewhere in the neighborhood of 2 to 2.5% increase in our baseline cost of borrowing, which obviously impacts businesses as they're thinking about leverage and financing, whether it be inventory or expansion, et cetera. So.
Absolutely. And so from the report, you had, there was outlined a distinction between large companies and then the small to medium size. How did the small to medium size fare compared to the large organizations during the pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, the themes are similar, across all sizes of businesses. Obviously, smaller businesses, the audience that's listening here today, have unique challenges compared to some of the larger businesses, especially when it comes to things like digitization and operational efficiencies. Larger firms are able to invest in more complex logistics and have been able to get their goods and services more available online easier. And that's been one of the keys that for some of the smaller firms has been to take advantage of digitization and find ways to improve their ability to compete. Now, one of the things that we see in this report is that there might be an inversion here, where all of a sudden being smaller and not being as complex with this global supply chain ecosystem that large firms have might actually be a benefit, given that with the conflict in Ukraine and obviously all of the various geopolitical and economic headwinds that are kind of brewing. There's a little bit of deglobalization, which is sort of happening, which is bringing things within your borders and manufacturing more within your borders and keeping your supply chains within your borders, which then obviously will benefit some small companies, small firms, to be able to maybe act a little more nimbly than some of the bigger ones would be.
Absolutely. And I know the government unveiled their Canadian Digital Adoption Program just a few months ago. And so for anybody listening, if you're not aware of that and you want to get your business up to speed on digitization, that's a great opportunity to receive some funds in the form of a grant to pay for those assessments and some consultants to help you. And I know when I've been working with business owners the last few months, they've been dealing with those price escalations from the cost increases, whether it's on gas, definitely pulling their hair out when it comes to labor shortages across all different industries. So it's pretty tough to be able to deal with all of that. Now, I know that you've got some operational strategies that they should be considering and thinking through as they're looking at their plans for the coming year. So what does Scotiabank recommend for recovery and growth now that we're coming through the pandemic and we're trying to move on from this?
Yeah, thank you for that, Tracey. And as mentioned, with our Path to Impact report last fall, we had a set of recommendations, very pragmatic and practical steps that a business owner could take and should have taken at the time to help navigate, as we now kind of move through the winter and we're now into the spring and we see kind of the pandemic, kind of more in the background currently for us, and now really the economic headwinds in the forefront. And as I mentioned previously, the cost of borrowing going up. So I think for these times, business owners really need to be focused on planning your liquidity and your cash flow. Really understanding with inflation, there are choices in terms of, the input costs are increasing, your borrowing costs are increasing. How much appetite do your customers have to absorb some of those increases? So your pricing strategy with your customers is very important to determine how best to protect your existing revenue flow and increase it to handle the higher expenses that you're having, and then evaluating what you need from an inventory and an investment point of view, and determining when the right time to move on that is, because with the forecast being that rates are going to continue to rise, now might be the time to make some investments while borrowing costs are still more manageable, and therefore position yourself in a place that'll allow you to not be impacted by the increases in costs that are going to come with respect to the continued increase in interest rates. That would be kind of step one. Step two would be, as mentioned previously, digital. So have you really, automated as much of your business flows as you can, whether it be through Scotiabank. We have, a great set of cash management products and services that allow you to, move money, receive money digitally. Business Interact for Business e-transfer service is one example. Many others, depending on if you're dealing with cross-border, et cetera. Those are things that are important. And then, depending on, the type of business you have, maybe you already did this as a result of COVID and lockdowns, but making sure that you've got, your storefront kind of virtualized as much as possible, so that you're not solely relying on the brick and mortar physical location that you have, so that you have some, kind of facilities to be able to either arrange for curbside pickup or do, online delivery or online purchasing for your customers. So those things are critical. Thirdly, monitoring the economic environment. And so being mindful and aware of what's topical in the business headlines in the various news publications across the country on a regular basis, because this is not a benign environment, right? This is an environment that's the world has been rapidly changing, at a pace that many people who study this, for a living haven't seen in their careers, right? So as a business owner who's just out there running your business day in and day out, generally you've been able to kind of, in the last many years, not necessarily have to pay attention to the economic forecasts, because rates have been at historic lows through COVID, and they were at near historic lows pre-COVID. So cost of borrowing wasn't really a big factor. If you needed access to capital, it was just a matter of making sure you've got a bank and an advisor that helps you secure the right facilities so that you can draw on them when you need them. But now it's a different environment. So paying attention to that and making difficult decisions as it relates to surviving the volatility, right? And that again gets back to pricing, it gets back to labor, it gets back to input costs, supply chain, where you're planning to get your supply from. A lot of these things now require very thoughtful, hard decisions, because the access to some of the things you've taken for granted maybe aren't as simple as before. And therefore, really concluding, it's really important to make sure you have the A team around you, have a very competent small business advisor. Obviously at Scotiabank we have them from coast to coast. Make sure that you have good whether it be accounting and legal and other experts that help you manage your business there to give you advice and make sure that you're making the right choices. You understand the implication of the decisions you're taking. Excellent.
And your economics department has some great reports there. That's a great resource for business owners to be able to keep themselves current by subscribing or regularly going to the economics page. And when you're making all of your comments around pricing and how far can you go and increase your prices to the end customer, I know I'm having that dialogue with people regularly, and that's not the initial thought. They're feeling the brunt of it and bearing the brunt of it, not quite realizing that profit is eroding if it was profitable originally. So really getting into that kind of math where you're figuring out, is this still working? What do I have to do to make it still work? Am I going to have to place larger orders to be able to deal with that lead time to get the quantity I'm going to need? So lots of complexity going on right now. And I think all of those suggestions that you gave are fantastic. So just to recap, planning, liquidity, and cash flow, diving into digital, monitoring the economic environment, and then having your financial team all around you, I think will put people in really good stead if they're doing at least one of those, but trying to apply all of them would be fantastic. Before I let you go today, is there any final piece of advice or insight you'd love to leave the viewers with? It might be something you already mentioned that you want to reiterate, or it might be something brand new you want to leave them with.
Yeah, thanks, Tracey. I think you've summarized it well. Our role here in serving businesses across the country is to make sure that we're providing relevant advice and solutions to help business owners navigate these types of uncertain times. So I really just emphasize the importance of making sure that you're connecting into those resources. As you mentioned, obviously at scotiabank.com/small business, we have lots of relevant content and information for you to take advantage of, whether it be the economics reports and just advice about the various products and services we have. And then again, we have a network of advisors across the country that would be happy to speak with you and help meet your needs, because that's probably the biggest thing that from a banking point of view we can offer to help small businesses thrive and survive into the future. And then lastly, I think the report itself offers some pretty fact-based insights that are, as you mentioned, affecting all businesses of all types. So this isn't an isolated event where a business in a certain industry or another industry is dealing with these issues. Obviously, certain industries feel some of the brunt of the economic and supply chain and labor issues more than others. But generally speaking, this applies to all of us. So therefore, it's really important to be on top of the information, making sure you have your A team around you. That's how I'd kind of summarize it for you, Tracey.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Jason, for joining us. Really appreciated your insights. All of the content from this report, I think it's really valuable for all the business owners checking it out, as well as to any of the potential suppliers that are tuning in as well. If there's anything you can do to help your customers too. Yes. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Nice to be here with you today.
Thanks. So there you have it, listeners. Jason Charlebois, Senior Vice President, Small Business at Scotiabank. So for those tuning in right now on LinkedIn or Facebook, I'm going to go and drop the links for you to Scotiabank as well as to the report. So you can reach out as you like to learn more. And then certainly all of this will be there on the replay as well. So until next time, take good care and stay financially fit.